It's Thursday. It's Mark Pyers. And it's Real Talk.
I was walking down the road today, looking for another way
To ease my mind
and help my living.
and help my living. It's Real Talk. It's the daily variety show, Mark Pyers Real Talk. I'm here to help you make smarter moves, to amplify your current state, and I'm here on a very special episode. I'm just going to let it go. Let's see. I'm bringing him on right now. I got a special guest today. This is Dr. Josh Shajan. I'm going to move my camera so it looks a little better here. There we go. Hey, Cassandra. All right, so what I did here, Josh, just so you know.
Sure.
Josh, say hello.
Hi there. Josh Shajan. Nice to meet you.
So glad to have you on the show today.
Happy to be here, Mark.
I basically told everybody for the last 4 or 5 days you were coming on.
I appreciate the shout out.
Oh, absolutely. I've been freaking out about this whole thing, obviously. The world is, and Josh is a doctor here in the state of Connecticut. And I've known Josh for years now, and I've been wanting to bring him on the show just to have a conversation, just to have a real talk about positivity, how it works in your life, you know, dealing with clients, with your patients. And then all of a sudden we're smack dab in the middle of this pandemic, especially yesterday.
As of yesterday, it is a WHO certified pandemic.
And what does that mean exactly? What is a pandemic?
So a pandemic basically indicates that we have a situation with a contagion that can cause a great deal of harm to the public health.
I see. Okay.
And there's a certain percentage of people that have to have a risk of exposure and mortality to meet that criteria. Basically based on a disease virulence. Basically, the disease can cause significant harm based on exposure to a certain number of people. And once it crosses a certain percentage, it's considered to be a pandemic. So in the past, things like SARS and if you remember MERS,
yes,
these different diseases, they don't necessarily meet the actual state of pandemic unless it crosses a certain threshold of people.
Now, do you feel that they kind of held on to this term a little longer than they should have?
I think we were all sort of wondering how far this would go, and definitely it could have been released a little bit earlier, I think, based on sort of how quickly it was spreading, the level of contagion. I think, generally speaking, we don't expect these things to take hold the way they do. We hope that in a very optimistic way that they will sort of sort themselves out more quickly than it should take.
Yeah. Now, do you think also, as far as it seems, my philosophy on this is where it started, obviously. Some countries just were like, whatever. Now, I think that if our president didn't shut down the borders right away, it would be a lot worse, don't you think?
It's very possible. Obviously, this didn't originate here, right?
Yeah.
The origins of the virus, they have sort of traced them to China. And the coronavirus family basically means these are viruses that are transmitted at some point from animals to humans.
I see. Okay.
That's true for all coronaviruses. The particular coronavirus that is implicated in SARS-1 and now SARS-2 are from the bat family.
I see.
So that transition has to happen at some point, and then from there, people essentially bring them from one place to another.
I see. Now, I've been reading a lot of stuff I probably shouldn't have been reading, just to try to get information on this.
Sure, of course.
Something that I thought was kind of interesting. You tell me if this is accurate. A doctor somewhere in maybe Wuhan, they had a study, and they said if you keep your mouth hydrated every 15 minutes, for example, you drink water,
Sure.
that you could actually swallow the virus and it will die in your stomach. Is that true from the bile, or is that not accurate?
That's actually not an unreasonable thought. The reason these issues, sorry, 1 second, apologize.
By the way, just so you know, we have water there, just so you can keep your mouth.
Yeah. So the risk of this virus is really respiratory, right? Your entire respiratory system is lined in mucus, from the nasal passages down the airways into the lungs. All of these SARS viruses induce, when serious, a severe acute respiratory syndrome. If somehow you are cleverly able to wash the virus into your acids, into the acid in your GI system, theoretically, yes, it's possible. You could completely avoid infection with the virus. The problem becomes if the virus enters into the mucus passages, the nasal passages.
Then it gets
into the
your
lungs, and that's where it can do damage.
Now, what is why are children not really susceptible to this?
Because children are amazing.
I agree.
There's a massive age factor that basically predicts how sick an individual will be. Children, simply because they are younger humans, are much better able to regenerate everything, cells, tissue, fight infections. They have active immune systems, and simply because they're younger humans, they are less affected because their immune system is more quickly and better able to adapt to infections.
Interesting. And as we get older, obviously we have more ailments, we have more issues that contain...
being a human as you're aging, everything works, just not as well as it did the year before.
It starts to fall, yeah.
Exactly. So,
my brother-in-law said something pretty interesting once. He said, we were thinking about my father-in-law. He's in his 70s now. And I'm 41, he's like 46. He's like, I'm only like 30 years away from Bob,
being 70, sure.
Yeah, and he's like, if you think about it, how many more years of good living do we have left? How many more years do I have in these knees?
Life
is
significant. Yeah,
go
sure.
mountain climb, whatever you like to do. How much time do you really have in this body to do those things comfortably and enjoyably? You know what I mean? It's a very good question. So obviously what we're all doing is trying to figure out how to stay away from this thing. Now you've been dealing with this on the front lines. Can you share a little bit?
Sure. So as a primary care physician, I work in Greenwich. I have a practice in Greenwich, a private practice. We're very busy. Generally speaking, when people have cold symptoms, fever symptoms, chills, whatnot, they want to go see their doctor. It could be us, it could be an urgent care, but I'm sort of part of that team that initially fields the different concerns with patients and then orders the appropriate test and then makes the diagnosis. So as you can imagine, media's done a very good job of creating awareness.
Oh yeah.
There's a great deal of hype, and a lot of patients have come to us with concerns that they've been exposed. They may have symptoms that are similar. And so now we're sort of, since the beginning of the week, since Connecticut had its first state
positive
test, which were not Connecticut residents, by the way, but they have since diagnosed Connecticut residents, we instituted a sort of no-contact diagnostic system. So if you're concerned you were exposed, you can sort of drive up in your car, and we can do lab testing. We can do a phone visit, and then send out relevant testing to the labs, and then call you with results and give you advice. And we're sort of getting into that now, and the first tests are going to be coming back soon, so we'll see what that shows.
Now, in general, when you get those tests through the window, do you spray the hell out of them, like with a Lysol or something? Like, what do you? Oh yeah, thanks, buddy. Let me just wipe my face real quick too. Like, how do you handle this material coming from somebody from a car window, so to speak? Like,
so PPE, or personal protective equipment, is sort of key in protecting the lab professional from the patient. Obviously, like washing appropriately, exchanging and getting rid of gowns and masks in the right spot, and then rewashing once you exit that location decreases the likelihood of transmission. And that's the best you can do.
Interesting. I'm also wondering, like, I know as a doctor, you're more aware of things, obviously, that make you sick or,
Right.
So, but do you think that doctors, lab techs in general, are able to shut off that switch that brings their hand to their face and touch? Because
we're
they
human,
said,
right?
Between
we
3
have
and 50.
tendencies.
Yeah, like I don't think it matters if you're a doctor. Or like, it's hard to stop that. You have to remind yourself to use the shoulder or the elbow.
So I think once you work in healthcare for a few years, you develop habits. Safe habits. I do hospital rounds every morning, and without even thinking about it, by the time I walked out of the hospital, I probably washed my hands with hand sanitizer about 50 times.
Wow.
Just because every time I see one, instinctively I go to use it and wash my hands. When I walk in, I wash when I walk in, I wash when I walk out, I wash walking down the hallway. It just becomes sort of a way of thinking.
Your habit, you're habitually washing, even if this wasn't going on, you were doing that.
If I walk by a hand sanitizer and I haven't seen the patient, why not?
Why not? It's there.
Exactly. I mean, you just develop these sort of mechanisms of protecting yourself that are unconscious because you understand that you're in the line of fire.
Well, you are typically, you're right. You're no matter what, whether it's SARS or whether it's coronavirus you said SARS-2 they call this?
Yes, that's correct. So coronavirus is just the family. Okay.
Yeah.
There are a number of viruses, and coronavirus is implicated in very regular cold syndromes. We diagnose coronavirus all the time for years. This particular strain is the second SARS virus. So SARS stands for severe acute respiratory syndrome.
I see. Okay.
Dash CoV, coronavirus, dash 2.
I see.
The
Okay.
second coronavirus family, SARS virus.
Wow.
That's all it's named. COVID-19 is simply coronavirus disease.
From 2019.
19.
What is I can't understand how literally almost 100 years ago was the Spanish flu. Now, as a doctor, was there something in 1719 or 1718 that was similar? Like, does this happen every 100 years where there's like a culling where all of a sudden, hey, sorry, if you can't handle it, survival of the fittest?
You know, that's interesting. I think a lot of people have sort of alluded to Darwinian theories about, you know, at some point there's going to be a correction where people with weak immune systems get cleaned out, right?
Yeah.
But that's never sort of imagined. We work very hard in healthcare to produce vaccines, to improve public health, to improve education, purify our water systems. We don't anticipate this from happening.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think, you know, viruses, they're machines. They're not alive. They're replicating machines, and they're based on DNA. Eventually, when there's enough mistakes made in DNA, you can introduce mutations that are resistant to every public health measure,
Wow.
and then they get spread. So no one hopes this happens. No one plans for this. No one expects this. Otherwise, we'd be much more prepared.
Yeah.
We don't even have enough ICU beds
Yeah.
in the world.
What do they say, 150,000 in the U.S.?
Right. We wouldn't have enough, you know, to accommodate if every case were to become critically ill. So that's scary. Obviously, if we thought this was coming, that would be the case, right?
Well, also because you have other ailments. You have other people who
There are
need
other
the
people who are
beds.
dying of other, ailments and syndromes that require equally as critical care.
I got a couple people on here over on Facebook, just a few comments.
Sure.
Crossover here said, wash hands by any means necessary. And
So I think in general, like, you should get in the habit of cleaning every point of contact. You know?
literally your computer, your phone, everything, right?
At least, you know, at the very least your hands, but moving forward, now you really can't be sure of anything, you know? You could be carrying it on your fingers and then touch your nose.
Well, this is what scares me most. Let's see if anybody over here on Facebook has any questions. Guys, any questions for Dr. Josh Shajan? Go ahead and ask him. We're going to be here for a while chatting about all kinds of stuff, but right now we're into the coronavirus. And, obviously we're all concerned about this. Yesterday, Westport schools closed. New Canaan schools closed yesterday. We
Greenwich
are in
schools
New
are
Canaan.
closed, and Stanford schools are closed as of yesterday.
So Greenwich is now closed.
Yep.
And Stanford
Stanford
closed
schools
as of
closed.
yesterday as well.
Yeah.
So guys, Fairfield, which is where my kids go to school, I assume that'll be today as well, or tomorrow. I don't know, but my brother actually wrote a great Facebook post yesterday saying, what is this about being reactive? We should be proactive. Why aren't you shutting down the schools before we find a case in Fairfield? Something like that.
I think that's the right attitude. You know, I think waiting for knowing it's already in the community, you're too late to the game, you know?
In New Canaan, wasn't it a community?
Acquired case. They're not sure where it came from. He was just out and about doing his business, and now he's been exposed. In fact, the Westport case, if you read about it, thanks to Mark, I used to live in Westport. He actually sold me my first home in Connecticut.
If you need help, guys, I'm here.
And he's very good at what he does.
Well, thank you.
The case was apparently a going-away party where 40 people attended.
Oh, my goodness.
And one of them had symptoms and still decided to come. So,
wait, they knew he had symptoms? He was saying, I'm
felt them.
feeling...
He didn't feel great. And then I'm not sure if they actually confirmed the case, but they were testing him. And then basically Westport said that, there's so many people that were at this party that could have been affected.
Now, in general, what is the safe distance to be away? If somebody is there a safe distance, or is it like, hey, it's in the air, buddy? If you're in the room with someone.
So this is a droplet precaution disease. It's airborne, right? So if you sneeze, and depending on the power of your sneeze, and some people would argue that some people sneeze more powerfully than others,
yeah,
that droplet can be sort of projected, many feet, way past 6 to 8 feet.
Wow, that's amazing.
And all you have to do is be within the right vicinity to sort of, and then touch it.
And then touch.
An orifice, and that's it. You've transmitted it.
And same thing, if you sneeze and I walk and I just breathe, same thing, right?
Absolutely. Wow. The scary thing about this whole situation is the latency, the point at which you're exposed until you develop symptoms.
It takes like 5 to 7 days, right?
They just concluded that's 5.1 days.
5.1 days.
That's a whole work week.
That's a whole work week before you feel anything.
Before you feel anything.
I've been doing this thing every morning just to make sure, where you take a breath for 10 seconds, make sure that I don't feel any tightness, that type of thing.
Sure. I mean, that can sort of trigger a bit of paranoia. Does my breath feel a little bit tighter than yesterday?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I had that this morning. I was like,
Sure.
I'm feeling something like right here.
Exactly.
And my wife's like, do you have a fever? I'm like, no. She's like, do you have a dry cough? I'm like, no. She's like, then you're fine, you know.
Typically, fever, chills, dry cough, flu-like symptoms, cold symptoms, these are the first signs of an evaluation. Doesn't mean you have it, it just means you get evaluated.
And that's the thing, because the flu obviously has very similar symptoms, right?
All viruses present sort of similarly, right? So
I saw someone on yesterday that said it feels like you're drowning. Like this is what this one feels like. If you get it, when you try to breathe in through your nose specifically, it feels like you're underwater. Have you heard that?
So, if you get like the actual disease,
yeah, they said like by the time you actually feel something, you're already 50% fibrosis or something like that.
So the way severe acute respiratory syndrome, or ARDS, is basically where your lungs kind of fill up with fluid because they've lost their ability to stay open. Your lung is essentially, you have lungs that are filled with alveoli. These are little sacs. These sacs are lined with what's called surfactant. That's fluid that keeps these sacs open. And it's that openness of these sacs that enables gas exchange. But what the virus does is causes these sacs to fill up with fluid. So in essence, you feel like you can't breathe, like you're underwater.
Wow.
But it's happening on a very micro level inside your lungs.
That's totally scary stuff. There's way too much to be worried about in this world as it is, and then now we have this. So what is the best case scenario here? Does this thing die at 78 degrees or whatever they say, or there's a chance it continues to year after year we see it?
Generally speaking, viruses denature. They're machines, right? They're made of proteins. They denature at high temperatures. Okay. That's why, in warmer parts of the world, it's not taking hold as well.
I see. Okay, so it actually is dying in those parts of the world.
Or it's not even living long enough to really make an impact.
Interesting.
So heat, generally speaking, which is why, December, January, February, we have more cases of the flu, and these viruses take hold. But by the summertime, it's generally too warm for these to survive.
And is it your theory, or is it a theory, that the longer something's around, it gets stronger, or does it start to split into something else, or does it weaken? Is there any?
The longer something's around and exposed, from a molecular theory, it generally gets stronger because
it does.
It adapts to whatever it needs to survive.
In order to stay alive. Wow.
Don't we all do that?
And what did we hear? That this is two different versions? Is that true? That there's one in Wuhan and one, or is it the same thing? I don't know. I heard something about an S and an R or something like that.
It's honestly, at this point, I would say that's a reasonable thought. I think it's hard to say. I'm not sure that anyone's really isolated it specifically to say that it's two versions and there could be a third, or it's just one.
Jeez, this is scary. So right now, our only hope is to not get it. If you get it, that you got the mild version.
If there is a mild version, sure.
If there is a mild version.
And honestly, it comes down to identifying it early, getting the help if you need it, and that you're healthy enough to weather it.
So if you say you get it, but you're like, hey, I think I was exposed, and you go right into the doctor, you're like, I don't have any symptoms yet, but I know. This 3 people, and I went like this right afterwards. Yeah. Is there a better chance of getting that treatment up front where you don't deal with the effects?
There's no treatment for these, right?
There's nothing,
for viruses in general. I mean, Tamiflu is there for the flu, influenza. It's not a cure. It's a speed up. It's an antiviral that helps the flu sort of
run its course
more quickly.
Interesting.
If you've had the flu shot, that is based on the effectiveness that year. It sort of does improve your chances of, if you contract it, that you have a better course. There's no cure though. Same is true for SARS-CoV-2.
Wow. So I was always like, well, as long as you get there early enough, they could just give you something to keep.
The idea is that it's going to run its course, and you can't do anything about the course it runs, but you can sort of identify early signs of problems and get you the help that you need.
So there are things, if you see someone suffering, you can give them something, but it's not a cure. It's a way to maybe get them to breathe for that period of time or whatever, but there's a chance.
Well, medical treatment is all directed at supporting all your vitals, right? Your heart, your lungs. So if there's a compromise of any of those, the treatment's directed at making sure those stay
okay, it comes back.
Safe.
That makes sense. So you're working on the entire body.
Correct.
Wow. This is totally crazy stuff. Let's see, anybody have any questions? Because I want to really see if you guys have any concerns or questions that Josh can answer. This is the time. I did want to ask you a few things that are non-related. Just,
Sure,
I think it's almost better. I think we need to.
I do a lot of this all day, every day, all night.
So it'd be nice to take your mind off of it for a second, chat about some other stuff.
I'm here for anyone. But
Well,
yes.
yeah, let's see if any questions come in about coronavirus or anything else. If you guys have them, send them over. But I was curious about the whole positivity thing. I've been here for 437 days in a row.
It's impressive.
And thank you. And it's something that it's funny now. I'm like, okay, I've done the 437. Everyone's like, oh my goodness. I'm like, I come every day to do it. And then once I'm done, I'm always like, well, I'm just going to show up again tomorrow. You know what I mean? So it's not like it's any different, but I did do it all, obviously. And it's been an hour a day for 437. So it's a lot, but
It's a commitment.
well, here's what's interesting about this. When you're trying to do something that theoretically hasn't been done, because there's a lot of people at talk shows. There's a lot of people that have specific talk shows. It's about one subject. But I have a variety show, and like every day is different. I'm doing
Which keeps things
celebrity.
interesting.
Yeah, I'm doing celebrity impressions one day. I have a doctor on the next day. I'm on my Beatseat playing some song, showing the world that. And so there's nothing. You're never going to come on and see the same thing here. So in a way, this hasn't been done because you could either be niche and then you could blow it out of the water,
Sure.
or you could try something that hasn't been done and then just take a lot longer for people to say, yeah, I want to be surprised every day. I don't want to go on and watch the
same
doctor
thing.
talk every day. I don't want to go watch the business. I want to hear something fresh. So
Sure.
this is what we're trying to get people to realize is it's better to get like surprised by what you get than say, oh, great, I'm going back to get more real estate chat, and we do a lot of that here. So, I mean, again, it's literally everything. But I was curious when you had that first thought about being a doctor, like, do you remember it? Do you remember where you were?
I was in high school.
You were.
Yeah, so actually I entered a program where you get into medical school from high school. So this commitment has been long-standing. My mom was a nurse practitioner. She still is. She's a very hardworking nurse. And
Where does she live?
they were in New Jersey in high school, and now they're in Rockland County.
Oh, that's right. I actually was born in Rockland.
They're in Pomona.
I lived in Pomona.
Is that right?
Yeah, crazy.
Nice town.
It's really cool. I mean, it's so funny. Guys, this is what we talk about when it comes to these pockets and how everything is connected. I was born. I mean, I wonder, like, how long have they been there?
Since I went to medical school, so 2008.
Okay. Yeah, I moved out when I was like 7, but still, it's always cool when someone's like, "Yeah, they probably live in my old house." No, I'm just kidding. But no, it's so you were in high school, and you were all of a sudden had this flash. You're like, "I want to be a doctor." Is that what? Did you get right to it, or were you thinking maybe I want to be an astronaut first?
Well, I was very interested in sort of two areas. I mean, when you're in high school, these are very broad understandings, through business and in medicine. My mother was in medicine, and my father worked in energy consulting, and so I had dreams of being on Wall Street. And I came across this program actually at Union College in upstate New York, where I ended up going. That was a combined business medicine program. So it was a bachelor's, an MBA, and an MD, all in 8 years. The MBA was in health administration, and it was sort of factorial, so I could get that business exposure. And at some point, I could make the decision between medicine and business.
Wow.
So I actually ended up, matching to continue through medical school, finished my MBA. I, did all of my business courses, and then I actually started residency at Greenwich through the Yale system. I finished that up, and I got an offer to go to Wall Street.
Wow. Right when you finished all of that.
Right when I finished all of that, I ultimately turned it down. Because I'd put in so much time in training, and I wanted to see sort of where this could go. I wanted to, work with patients. I felt that I was decently sort of good with people. And I thought that, at some point in the future, all of that experience of working with patients, I could potentially use in business. And that could have a much bigger impact than going after business directly.
That's amazing. It's reminds me a little bit of my brother-in-law who was going to school to be a lawyer, and he's a stockbroker. Gets his Juris Doctor. He becomes a lawyer, and he first like a couple months in the job, he's like, I don't want to be a lawyer. He's like, because he went in, he had to like, he's trying to get people off for things that he's like, he just felt slimy. Yeah, he was like, I'm done. So he's a lawyer, but he actually is a stockbroker. So he's like, It's just, but
That's
it's amazing.
a pretty common transition, by the way.
Is it really?
A lot of JDs end up in finance.
Wow, interesting.
Very common.
Okay. Well, I was kind of impressed by that, but maybe I shouldn't be.
It's, so
I'm just kidding.
Some of the most successful stock pickers are history majors. There's something about analyzing what's been done in the past that makes you good at predicting the future.
That's very interesting. It also reminds me a lot of, I often say that some people go to school for things, and then there are some people who know it better, and they never even were taught. They just have something
Natural
within.
aptitude. Right.
Natural aptitude. Yeah, just a connection to, it's like
We're
when
all
you watch
different.
Michael Jordan play basketball.
Right.
There's something artistic about that, and I always get into this conversation with people when they start saying who's the greatest of all time. Everybody thinks LeBron James is the greatest of all time. I'm like, guy's a moose, and he's a great athlete. He's phenomenal. But if you ever saw Michael Jordan move on the court, there's only one greatest of all time.
Sure.
And the way he would just, he would float. He would float. I don't understand still how I've seen people jump pretty high. Nobody hung in the air like that dude.
No one hung in the air like John.
Like how? How does he? Gravity didn't seem to.
Like John, man. You're absolutely right.
So basically, I think that's a good example. And this also is a very important point. Apparently, he was cut from his freshman basketball team.
Sure.
The drive of someone saying no. I love the idea when someone says, "What are you doing?" And it's just someone who doesn't get it, or it's someone who just doesn't have the ability to try, and they're afraid to fail. But someone who has failed, I think, has a different type of motivation to them.
I think at the end of the day, the belief in yourself is the most powerful thing.
Yes.
It doesn't really matter what the world thinks of you, the community thinks of you, even your closest friends and family think of you. Ultimately, that's the thing that people give a lot of importance to. But what comes down to success is what you believe about yourself.
So true. So true.
You can, if you create tunnel vision between you and your goal.
I love that. I love that. I always say,
That's
guys,
the only way to get it done.
I don't even hear anything. I hear all this stuff going on. I'm just like, shoo. I'm just dialed in on that door at the end of the hallway, and I'm like, I see it. I don't know how long of a road it is, but I see it.
What I always say is, listen, if your intentions for that goal are true, and your heart's in the right place, and if you actually want it, it's going to happen for you.
It's going to happen. It's just time.
Sure.
Something I keep coming up with all these wow moments, right? And one of them was, life isn't about talent. It's really not. It is about having talent, but it's about talent. Yeah, it's about talent plus effort plus time. Nobody realizes
There's a word for that.
What is that?
And Calvin Coolidge actually said it very well in a speech, but it's persistence.
Persistence. That's true.
It's extended amounts of hard work.
And that doesn't make sense to the normal.
Exactly.
Because that's what I think Steve Jobs said that once. He was like, what's entrepreneurship truly is it's insanity, because everybody around would never put that type of work in, but you believe so much in this thing that there is no such thing as no or I quit. You just keep going, but everybody else would be like, I quit.
Right.
And that's what makes you the guy that you are, and why you will get to where you're planning on going.
100%.
And it is an interesting thing you say about personal belief, because in general, I think we're so negative on ourselves. The society around us causes us to be that way.
It's not just, how we're raised as a society. We have so much negative input, right? Before social media, your exposure were your parents, it was your classmates, it was your friends. And that was the sort of obstacle you had to overcome to get to where you wanted to go, even if they didn't believe in it.
Yeah.
Now you have people you don't even know. Themes that are out in the world telling you that you shouldn't do what you want to do.
Isn't that amazing?
And even that is much more impactful than your own family and friends now.
Yeah, because we take so much stock in those comments and those likes,
Right.
I got to tell you, it is kind of a discouraging thing when you were doing something like this and you put out a great piece of content, and it's like, wow, I can't wait for someone to get something out of this. And you see 20 views, 30 views after 6 hours. You're like, how is that possible with 2,000 followers? Because you realize the algorithms are so out of whack now. If you don't pay for placement, you're just in the mix somewhere. Right. But it does get discouraging, and I kind of have this, and it's almost a personal belief thing, like you said, where I say to myself, whenever I start to get discouraged, I say, I'm not here for that. I'm here to leave a message every day.
If you believe in that message and you believe in your mission,
that's all that matters. Yeah, because if people want to tune in at some point and they want to get something out of it, I'm here. Like, that's not going to change. You know, again, my new thing, I used to say, my wife would be like, you're crazy. It sounds weird when you say this, but I'd be like, I'm going to be live every day for the rest of my days. She'd be like, that sounds so weird. It sounds hokey. I'm like, no, then I'm just going to say, I'll see you tomorrow. That's right. And that's it. I'll just keep saying, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Sure. And again, right now is hashtag 730. We're on our way to the end of our second year of Real Talk. But I'm just going to keep saying to everybody, I'll see you guys tomorrow, because my personal belief is at a certain point, the world tunes into this program and says, you know what? I want to shut off the negatube. It's just bringing me down. But this show is excitement constantly. Positivity and motivation.
It's a can-do show.
It's the can-do show. Well, I know. I always say, maybe you can relate to this, that we all have a unique genius within us.
Absolutely.
Maybe one thing, maybe more. Okay. Like, I think I have a few things that I've found within myself. Some people have one. We have at least one. And it's such a good thing. Something that no one else around you can do. You could bring something to the table that no one else is bringing to the table. But if you do not search within to find it, you will never find it. And most people are looking out for it. They're looking at what Josh is doing. They're looking at what I'm doing, or what, instead of figuring out what they can do, what that spirit inside wants to bring to the surface. And I'm just curious, so you believe that's kind of a similar, that we all have that too? Do you think that's true?
We're all unique people with unique dispositions, unique upbringings, unique set of experiences, personal triumphs and tribulations. I think that creates an attitude of looking at things.
Yeah.
Ultimately, some people realize that that unique set of experiences makes them better at one or two particular things than other people. And you're not sure why, but you're just better at it.
Yeah.
You like it and you get it, you know? And it's important to realize that everyone has probably something that applies to. It's just cultivating it, recognizing it. If you don't have the support around you, going and getting that support, and sort of honing and focusing that particular talent.
And that's what I feel like this show is, to your point, is this is the connection. So I feel, I don't know if this is true, but if you build enough positive energy within yourself, you start to connect to things that you will not find with any negativity.
Right.
And this show is so much positivity that I feel like if people get there with me, they'll start to get creative urges. And I got to tell you guys, this is the most important thing. What you feel, what you think, you got to go for. And I'm about to tell Josh my new business that I just created 2 days ago.
That's great. Congratulations.
Okay.
What is it?
Okay, so check this out, and especially in your field, I think you can relate to this, and because you are a homeowner. So, and this is for people like you, doctors, businessmen. Check this out. It's called Stay Safe Concierge Real Estate Services. Here's the concept, okay? You stay safe. We go into the house. We shoot a walkthrough video, first person. I talk about what's there, what needs to be done, and you get a ballpark estimate of the costs for those updates, the potential updates. You could buy from 1 house to 10 houses. You get your link within 24 to 72 hours with all the breakdown. And you could stay safe at home, look at all of your selections, and then say, you know what? I didn't like these 9, but I love this one. Let me call my realtor, and I'm going to only see the one instead of being dragged around all these houses. Because the thing I also realize is businessmen don't like, I'm bringing people around. They're in their phones.
Sure.
They're looking at 60% of what we're actually doing. Then they're spending 15 minutes from house to house driving around.
Right.
I think if I was a buyer, and I know I could buy 10 houses for $400 and I get videos of all 10 of those houses.
It'd be much easier to make an educated decision with all information in front of you.
Right? And then you don't have to
see actually the 2 houses you're interested
pick
in.
only the ones you want to see.
Makes sense to you.
And the philosophy here is, say, yeah, I spent $400, but how much money could that businessman make at work if he spent a full day at work instead of going out?
For a lot of the folks who are at that level of accomplishment, that hourly rate, I mean, it's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. Some people are making ridiculous money per hour, and then they have to take half a day out to look at homes. They hate most of the homes because you can't tell from the photos.
I mean, you think you're going to like it.
You think you're going to like it.
Yeah, my attitude to certain endeavors is, if it's not your trade, let the professional do it.
Exactly. Well,
let the people who do it for a living help you.
And this is why I love this concept for a business. Because I have the real estate hat and the construction hat,
right.
When I do the tour, it's not the tour you get from the listing agent.
Who's
look
trying
at
to
this
make the
beautiful,
listing.
yeah, look at this beautiful. No. These stairs have an issue. Right. You know, I just walked through and it looks like you have a little bit of a tilt to the first floor. Like, stuff I'm going to bring up is what almost like you get from an inspection.
Sure.
And to think like you could buy a single house for $60. I used to charge $150 for a video walkthrough to agents who wanted me to do a video walkthrough of their properties. So I'm thinking it's a very, like, I maybe should be charging more, to be honest. Like, that's $60. I should probably charge $100 for a house, but who's going to spend $100 if they may not buy that house? 60, they probably would. So again, it just started, Stay Safe Concierge, and it just popped into my head 2 days ago, because here's my other thought. If everything shuts down like it looks like it's shutting down, I'm a realtor. What am I supposed to, how do I make money if I can't go out there and sell real estate?
Houses, sure.
I have to figure out a new way to adapt. And that's one of the things I talk about.
Multiple streams of revenue is like also an extremely important part of creating long-term success.
For sure, for sure. And this is what we've been, between this new thing, which hasn't obviously, now you can book it, but it hasn't gone anywhere yet. The Beatseat, that's a huge thing for me to hopefully create another form of income.
Fantastic idea, by the way.
Thank you, thank you. Yesterday, we just dropped a piece of content today. My wife put up on LinkedIn. I dropped it here on Facebook. The CEO of Gibson, I built him his own personal Beatseat, which was pretty cool. We had to hold on to it. It was done around Christmas because we wanted to make sure he was okay with having it out there. And he was like, absolutely. He's like, I love my Beatseat. And he said something pretty cool. He said, you know, with what's going on in the world right now, maybe we need more Beatseats and guitars out there. I was like, oh. Can you please do a deal with us, Gibson?
I think there's a return to finding entertainment at home.
For sure.
And not going out and getting it.
And it's funny. Safer. My wife said that. She goes, you know, you may find that all of a sudden a ton of people are tuning into Real Talk because what else are they going to watch?
Right.
I'm like, geez, that's interesting. Because right now, no one's going to watch an hour plus of me live on the internet. If I was on TV, yeah, because you could just tune the TV in.
Right.
But the phone?
You have to go get it.
Got to go get it. Yeah, but this, I think, it will start to be where no one has anything to do. And they know I'm live. I've been live for 4:30. Guys, I'll see you tomorrow. I'll be here tomorrow, you know. And tomorrow is music night on the Beatseat, as you guys know. This is just a never-ending show, Josh. I've been doing this crazy stuff lately. I don't know if you've seen any of this, but you're so busy, you probably haven't. Have you ever seen face swaps?
I saw it sort of briefly maybe a few months ago, I think.
You know what that is? Like where you have a picture of like...
Snapchat filter and then sort of like...
Yeah, so basically like... It's this program I have now, and I can take any photo, and then my mouth is moving, right?
Right.
And because I'm a celebrity impressionist, so now I'm doing like Trump versus Biden versus Bernie, and then I did the Democratic debate, which was hilarious, probably the best thing I've done to date. And so now it's just like, what is going to happen next? Yesterday was Robert Stack is back from the dead. Do you remember Robert Stack from Unsolved Mysteries?
I never tuned in, honestly.
Okay, he's that guy who, he'd be like, December 4th, 2020. Do you remember this? He's like, he's a creepy dude.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, I've been doing this thing on January 11th. I did, he's back from the dead. He died about 15 years ago. Cryogenically frozen. Okay. Now this is 2150. He's been filming the Unsolved Mysteries again. He's sending them, it's called Stack to the Future. He's sending them back, Josh. Stack to the Future. And so December or January 11th, I got a Stack to the Future. And then March 11th, I got another one from Robert Stack. So we dropped those back to back yesterday. So it's like, what's going to happen tomorrow on Real Talk, you know? So hopefully people tune in. I don't know.
Keep it interesting.
Keep it interesting. So anyway, something I want to, if you're okay with chatting about this, one thing I thought was brilliant when I met you and your wife originally, and you guys, if it's okay, if you mind chatting about it, caveat all.
Sure.
But when I first met, she's an attorney, you're a doctor, and I remember thinking, geez, what a power couple, right? And the first time we had a conversation, I said something to you, because I'd mentioned I had 3 kids. And I said, well, just a natural question. You guys are married. I said, so when do you guys plan on having kids?
Sure.
And you had a very interesting answer. Do you remember what you said to me then?
I don't remember.
This is about 5 years ago. So I think you guys said like, we have an 8-year plan or something like that. Sure. Or it's like a 10-year plan.
Sounds
something.
Like something we agreed to would say.
Which I thought was brilliant. And the philosophy, and this is what I want you entrepreneurs to know out there. If you drive for a goal, and then you get that goal, and then immediately you're just like, I'm gonna have kids. And then like, what is that for? Like you guys both are powerhouses. You went out and did something. And then for example, for Kavya to just say, you know what, I'm gonna stop now and just be a mom. Like that's the greatest job in the world. Just so you know, my wife does that amazingly.
Right.
But she worked really hard to get that, you know what I mean? And then to just say, I'm gonna put it on hold. I thought it was a really, really interesting decision together to say, you know what, we want to try to tackle our professions for a period of time, and then we're going to say, okay, let's kind of enjoy this part of our lives.
So I think that my wife and I both agree that family life is where we'll ultimately find our happiness. But part of that vision of a successful and happy family life is that she and I are both fulfilled.
Yeah.
You can't be there for someone else if you are yourself not whole.
Makes sense.
She and I both spent a lot of time in school. We spent a lot of time, devoted to our careers. And part of that successful family life that we want to build are two happy parents, husband and wife, and successful parents.
Successful careers,
that,
yeah.
That
individually.
That we're not just, the child is not, if we were to have a child, God willing,
Yeah.
That child is not just our life, but that we can give something to the child by looking up to us as for inspiration and, serve as an example for that kid to be motivated to go out and do whatever he or she wants to do.
It's a very interesting thing you say, because you're almost building a familial, just a memory for your children, for your grandchildren. I saw something interesting the other day, and it was a Gary Vee video. And I only learned about who Gary Vee was because of what I'm doing here. One of my followers was like, hey, do you know who this guy is? And since I found out who he is, I'm like, first of all, it sounds a lot like the stuff I do. He's great. And one of the things he said was, a couple things he said were very interesting. But one of the things he said is you need to put the time in. Most people expect things to come to you immediately.
Sure.
They all want it right away.
Instant gratification is very common in this country.
Absolutely. And so I liked what he said, though. He said, put your head down and do the work. And in 11 years, you'll have a decent business. I was like, wow, very interesting. So but you have to put the time in if you want to reach a level, if you want to be able to do that. And then the other thing I took away was, and again, going back to who cares about who's watching, that doesn't matter. What I'm doing for 437 and beyond is creating a body of work for my children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren to look back at one day. Do you know how long it's going to take for them to get through all my content?
I think you're easy to watch, Mark.
I'm just saying right now, my grandkids, my great-grandkids, you're watching this clip, and I want to tell you that I love you. I did this all for you. I went live every day as hard as I could because I don't hear the word no when I believe in myself. I just go, and I will get to I talk about an imaginary finish line.
Right.
Like, I see it. It's that door we're talking about. And I'm just going, Josh. I'm like, I don't care how long it takes.
I think when you think about the next generation, listen, when you're young, as you age, you think about yourself, right? As you get older, you start to think about, what am I giving to the next generation?
Yeah. And
I think the best thing that you can do is lead by example. What you want to leave that next generation is that whether or not you were a success in your eyes, that you tried as hard as you could.
For sure.
They feel that.
Yeah.
And that's all that matters to them.
That's so true. That's so true. And I mean, honestly, everybody's so impressed by everybody. Like, you'll see, oh, wow, I'm so impressed by, but that person failed a lot. Like, I failed a lot.
Sure.
And then, they hit really hard. And one thing, like Bezos hits it with Amazon. I think he failed at a bunch of things before he got to Amazon. There's a picture of Jeff Bezos sitting in an office in 1996.
With
and
books on his desk.
It says, Amazon with, a banner that someone wrote with, pen.
Right.
And he's, smiling because you know what? He believed.
He did. He left a very high-paying job on Wall Street.
Is he the richest guy in the world right now?
Yeah.
Right.
In history.
Now, if he looked at that photo, and he said, geez, look at this. Look at my office. Look at this is what I have, a banner.
He was delivering books to the U.S. Postal Office.
He was hand delivering
himself.
That gives me a little bit of extra positivity, to be honest. Like I keep saying to my wife, we get an order for a Beatseat. I go into the basement and I build that Beatseat. I ship that Beatseat. Everything's being done by me. And I'm like, wow. But you know what? When you are the guy, when you're the entrepreneur, until you can grow, until you could hire people, who's going to do the work?
If you believe in your idea, you're the only one to execute that idea.
Execute.
Until that critical mass is reached, it's you and your product or service, whatever you believe in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So true. So true. So anything you want to talk about? Anything that you want to bring up on the show?
I mean, honestly, I think it's kind of a crazy time. Our days are there's 100 questions every day from concerns. And
what are your hours currently? Because I know right now you guys are probably working overtime.
Well, I mean, as a physician, you take call. I take a lot of call. I go to the hospital in the mornings, and then I'm in the office by around 10 a.m. and then I work till 5 o'clock, and then I do rounds back at the hospital, or I'll go to a skilled nursing facility and see patients that aren't able to be out in the community, and then I'll take call when I get home, do my noting, and that continues, for 12 days straight. I'll do Monday through Friday plus the weekend, and then Monday through Friday again.
So you work on Saturdays and Sundays as well?
And I take every other weekend off, roughly.
Let's see. They said Hartford leaders discuss decision to close schools in summer. This is a Channel 3 thing. I don't know what's going on over there. I get all these little news stories popping up over here. But I'm sure we're going to wind up seeing more cases coming. I mean,
this is tip of the iceberg.
Tip of the iceberg, really?
The thing is, because of the 5-day latency, I think a lot of people are just have no idea they're sick and they're out in the community, you know? And because of the sort of staggered nature of the cessation of that contact with schools closing at different times and travel bans at different times and people not really understanding how it's presenting, it's just going to be one exposure followed by a week later another exposure. It'll just keep perpetuating until it actually dies out.
Now, do you think this idea of if we shut down for 2 weeks everywhere that we could kill it? Or do you think it's like, because
it would, my honest opinion, it would take a full shutdown of at least 4 weeks.
4 weeks?
It would take a 4-week shutdown.
Wow.
And it would have to be a national shutdown.
So here's a question that we both aren't qualified to answer. What happens in a country where you know like 60, 70%, 60% of people, probably 50 to 60% of people are living a month-to-month life,
Sure.
right? How do you tell all those people, sorry, you got to stay home? They got a job at McDonald's, they got a job at Taco Bell.
So I was thinking about this last night. I'm like, what's the best way to do this? And I guess it would have to come from the top. Theoretically, what would happen is everything would, it'd have to be an 11-month year. So all of the folks that are calling on you for some sort of
bill or whatever,
everybody gets paused for a month.
For a full month, yeah.
Your mortgage company, no, don't pay for a month. Your utility bill, don't pay for a month.
So that would be from the president. He would have to say.
It would have to be a full shutdown for a month.
Is that on the table at all or no?
No.
See, that's the only way to do it. Because what happens, I saw one of my Facebook friends today post something. They said, what happens to this country when the worst part is the amount of people that go bankrupt from you guys shutting down and then not giving them an opportunity to get to cycle through.
Right.
You know, like that's going to be an issue if you have people who can't even buy milk because they didn't get to go to work that week.
Exactly.
You know, like
I think that's hundreds of billions of dollars are being lost in the markets.
Hundreds of billions of dollars have? Is that working? Oh, there we go.
Yeah, in terms of
actual value.
Wow. Right? People's life savings are being lost now.
It's amazing.
Wouldn't it have been better if the stock market was just shut down a week ago?
Is that an option either too? Like, could they have done that?
Yeah, they can.
Just be like, look, we're going to shut down the stock market.
Trading.
No trading. Nobody's going in. Nobody's going out. Money stays flat.
And then we'll reassess when people are not frantic.
That's a really great idea. See, why isn't anybody listening to Dr. Josh Shajan here, guys? What the heck is going on with you? Right. No, but that's a great idea because if we were able to just kind of get through the storm, you know what I mean?
People would feel very differently.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah. If there was a way to say, hey, you know what? Look, we're going to send X amount to everybody in the U.S. so they can get through the month. Right. Don't go anywhere. You know, if you need to get groceries, whatever, do that. But don't leave to do other stuff. Don't go to restaurants. Don't go out and be around people. That would be a way for people to feel comfortable. To your point.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, like it's a free world. It's a free market, and I mean, you can't take away people's sense of freedom.
Yeah.
Public health is very important, and I think as a country we have to understand and accept what that means and act on the behalf of everyone else to make that decision. You know, I'm going to stay home and take the pay cut for 2 to 4 weeks. And I mean, as an American, I personally would have a hard time doing that myself. Yeah. Let alone advocating that I should do it for someone else. You know, so
it's a good point.
It's the right. I mean, I think it's an ideal mentality, but it's what probably needs to happen.
Let's see. I'm going back a little bit here. Let's see. Cross had something to say about we take comments personally. Good things silence the doubters. I don't know what he meant by that, but hey, Caleb, how you doing? Any questions here for the doctor? We're going to continue to chat for a few more minutes. I don't want to keep Josh. He does have a life. He's still working it. Trying to save the world over here. And yeah, I think this is just a very interesting time. I'm really thrilled that you came on, and I'm hoping actually what we could do is down the line do one that's not about coronavirus. Just come on, and, you know what I mean?
Just general medical topics, or I mean other things that we want to talk about.
Yeah, like is there anything that I always wonder about this. Like I have a problem with blood. Right? I'm not a guy who could deal with seeing blood. Blah blah blah. Has there ever been a situation where you're like, I'm not going in there? Or like you're just like, I can't, like you got to do it, Tim, or anything like that? Or
I think as a professional, you sort of
you just get used to it, or
you have to do what you have to do. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not about what you feel like you're doing this for someone else.
So you're
it's a
thinking about
position
their
of
best
service,
interest at that moment,
right?
not about the fact that you may get squeamish or whatever.
Exactly. You're there to provide a service, and they're vulnerable. They're placing their trust in you.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't. You have to do what is expected and appropriate, and what's your duty. Otherwise, where's the faith?
Is there a situation you could think of that was really tough, like something you dealt with? You're like, geez, this is just a hard. Like, I hope I get through. I hope I could help. Like, but you were like, this is the chances are very slim.
I mean, as a physician, and I'm to see patients in the hospital who have end of life diagnoses, and that can be very challenging for a lot of patients. Especially the family members of those patients. There's been a drastic change in their health status in a matter of 1 to 2 weeks. This person was, out playing golf or living a normal life, and now they are potentially moments away from that life ending for whatever reason. And especially when it's an unexpected turn of events, when it's not an age-related diagnosis, when it's an accident.
Wow.
And having that conversation with someone that says, we have to think about the quality of life for this patient, what they would want, and whether or not it's the right decision to focus your efforts on comfort care. And if that ends up with their natural passing, that's what they would want, we should honor that.
Yeah.
It's very difficult for some families, but surprisingly, a lot of people are very sensible. When you ask them to think about their loved one, they do get into that mode where they do imagine that person and what they would want, and they act unselfishly. And so I think it's encouraging in those moments of difficulty when people really connect with the person that they knew. But listen, there are challenging situations, where patients are just like, I will not let this person go. I will, or
wow.
Even if they wanted it, and it's
Or
you just have to work with it.
I'm almost thinking too, or an occasion where you're saying all the right things, but they're just not listening.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you keep saying the right
is
stuff.
very personal.
Yeah.
You can't imagine what someone across the table is thinking about,
And what they went through, what that relationship was.
Yeah. It all makes sense to you on paper, but it's, life is very personal. It's very emotional. At the end of the day, it comes down to how you feel. So all the knowledge and research and guidance in the world is not going to change how you feel about that person.
Something, I wrote a song many years ago called I Need to Be Alone. And I have this theory that when you're in a relationship or you lose someone, anything like that, that you need to be alone. Now, some people mean like, what do you mean by that? Like sit in a room by yourself? I think you need time alone in order to reflect, in order to appreciate, have gratitude. And what happens when you do this is you start to find yourself again. And that's the line of the song. It's I need to be alone because I feel like I'm finding myself again. And there's another line in there that always blows my mind. It's the same people, the same moments. It's the same people, same hours, same moments keep following me along. And I can't get away. No, I can't get away from me. I always loved that. I can't get away from me.
Right.
It's like, no, everybody's like, I want to get away. I'm like, but you can't get away from yourself,
Sure.
from that feeling you have. You could pretend all you want, but you really need to be alone, because that's when you start to find yourself again.
It's true.
And I think people get into this kind of habit of, okay, I lost this thing. Let me just go and get right back into something. Let me go find someone. Let me go do something. And they're trying to fill a little gap there, but what they're really doing is more damage to themselves, because if they took the time to have gratitude and to reflect and to recenter, right, and to really find themselves again, then they could really do the right thing, which is to add value to another person's life.
That's what I was talking about earlier. You have to be fulfilled to really build on anyone else's life, right?
For sure.
You have to search yourself, find out where you feel unsatisfied, whether it's personal, professional, fulfill that need, and then be the deliverer of good news.
For sure. Deliverer of good news. That's the other thing. We kind of got into this earlier, but when you're dealing with patients who aren't feeling well, how important is bedside manner?
Bedside manner is incredibly important. You have to be sensitive. I think, when you're a healthcare professional, you deal with suffering. That's what you do. People are sick. They need help. And when you start seeing patients throughout the day, the numbers start piling up quickly. Add months on years of experience. It's very easy to become callous and insensitive to that person's suffering because
'Cause they're
it's all
just-
you see,
and it's just
a number on the list.
Yeah.
You know, so I think one thing I try to do is with patients is make it informal and ask them questions that separate them out from the person that I just saw.
Oh, interesting.
So I can get to know them a little bit better and what makes them unique.
How's
And
that
then-
cat
and then
doing, Tom? Like
and then
that
I
type
think
of
of
thing.
them as a person, not as a number,
I love that.
because now I know them personally,
Yeah.
something specific about their life and why they're not the guy in the next room.
You're using their uniqueness that we talked about earlier in order to make them memorable.
Exactly,
In order to
and
give
that
them
actually
a face.
creates a better rapport, and I act with that patient sort of more personally.
Because you care.
All of a sudden, I care.
Yeah, that's a wonderful thing right there. I think unfortunately what happens, especially you can tell us if this is true, when you're laying in a bed there. I mean, you can't get, they have the visiting hours, but the rest of the time you're there by yourself watching
True.
TV, you're
Yeah,
doing
right.
whatever. It's a very lonely experience. And say you're on your last moments, your last couple days, and this is going on. That's got to be a pretty frightening thing to be sitting there by yourself. The importance of a doctor who comes in and actually cares
It is.
is probably extremely valuable.
It is. I mean, a lot of people that end up in the hospital setting, there is a lot of loneliness that has led to them being there. Whether their home situation is sort of abandoned, or no one checks in on them, and they end up in the hospital because of that reason. So, when you're in the hospital, there's a lot of activity. Nurses, doctors, specialists, lab techs, healing touch. All these people come and check in on you, So it really can uplift that person to have someone that genuinely cares that you're there and that you're getting better. So, but no, it's overall a very challenging and sensitive experience.
Well, I never thought about, too, how many patients you're seeing. That's a very good point. I keep thinking back when we're talking about this to that movie Patch Adams. Do you remember that with
I love
Robin
that
Williams?
movie.
Great movie.
Love that movie.
Great movie.
Based
And
on
that's a
real-
sad thing.
Based on a real story.
Real story, right?
Real
The
doctor.
Patch or the Adams Institute or something. Is that
Yeah.
it? Really exists, right? Now, is that guy? He's very similar to the way Robin Williams acted.
Apparently, they were very identically portrayed.
Wow.
So-
You know what? And this is we get back
The
to the
Gesundheit Institute, I think it was called.
what was it called?
The Gesundheit
The
Institute.
Gesundheit. Yeah, that's actually it. You're right. And I haven't seen it in years, but I loved that movie. And that's a sad situation, the Robin Williams situation. Is there anything that you can share? Not that this is our wheelhouse here,
Right.
but any signs you may see with people where you're like, you know what, maybe that guy should see someone. Because I feel like a Robin Williams, for example, now I think he had some other underlying issues, which is why he did what he did. But you always see someone who's got that type of light in them, and you're like, well, why the heck would they extinguish it themselves,
I think there's a blessing and a curse to being successful. You end up it's very easy to take yourself out of society. You end up being removed, and it becomes harder and harder for people to access you, check in on you, take an interest in you. And surprisingly, a lot of people with a lot of resources, financially, fame, they suffer from a lot of mental illness and depression. So
Do you think it's that disconnect?
it's a disconnect. It's
Wow.
a disconnect,
So they have to shut themselves off from society because of that, the want and the need by the society.
The change in exactly the change.
And
in-
that
the change in
shuts off
status.
their endorphins, so to speak, because they don't all of a sudden, even though people do appreciate them, they don't get to feel that appreciation.
They're lonely.
They're lonely.
They're lonely.
Wow.
That creates mental illness. That creates when you have everything available to you, but your want for nothing and everything's possible, and all of a sudden there's a disconnect between what you need to do and what you can do, and what you end up doing. So you need to take yourself potentially to an even higher point. Substance abuse becomes a problem.
That's very true. That's very true.
Right.
It also is a very similar thing. If, someone mentioned recently about the billionaires. Like you see these billionaires, and then the kids wind up being a complete mess. Like they're given everything.
We shouldn't generalize that, but
Yeah, you're right. You're
You know.
right. There's been some that have been extremely successful, but I've
Absolutely.
seen the people that earn, it's a different thing when
Right.
maybe they're, like you said, their parents teach them the way they did it instead of just saying, well, here's $1 billion. You
Yes,
know what I
right,
mean?
of course.
Because we've seen a fair amount of them who you said have gone to substance abuse or something similar because they didn't understand what it meant, what their parents went through to make that. Like,
Right.
I'm thinking of who's not this, Paris Hilton.
Sure.
My song was on her show, The Simple Life, when she did it. And I was like, wow, I was very impressed with the
Your
fact.
song was on her show.
Yeah, I had a couple songs in her shows back then.
That's fantastic.
It was pretty cool. I made a couple dollars for it. It was with MTV, which was cool.
I hope you're still making money off that.
I don't think so. I haven't seen anything for it in years. Maybe I should check. But so it was a pretty cool thing. And I remember thinking to myself, here's a great example of somebody who could have gone and said, I got it all.
Right.
She created her own career. Very impressive.
So I think there's two angles when you have the situation where you're born into a lot of resources. There's rejection or there's adoption, right? I think some folks they want to do better than their parents. They want to somehow like meet up to or meet up to their standards, you know. And then there are some that just want nothing to do with it because of all the standards that were placed on them and the expectations that were placed on them.
It's a lot of pressure both ways.
It's a lot of pressure both ways.
Wow, I never thought about it that way. Like even if you're like, I don't want it, Dad, I don't want any of it, the stress of that is just as powerful as saying I want to try to be as good or to do as much as Dad. Very interesting. Well, listen, grandkids, if you're watching, don't try to do what Grandpa did, okay? Literally, this is just his craziness. Don't act the same way. But that'd be a funny thing if one day my great-grandkids are watching this. They're like, wow, it's funny. He's talking to me right now.
Well, I mean, I think, let's say, for example, your great-grandkid became a award-winning talk show host.
Hey.
Or a radio
And I never
DJ.
Got there.
Exactly. You
Then
never
they
got
say
there.
I beat
I was watching
Grandpa.
Granddad's videos, and he's my inspiration.
Yeah, very cool. That's very true. Well, we're here to try to leave something behind for our kids, right?
Sure.
And I really, it's funny, I got to tell you a side story. So when I was a kid, I was in 7th grade. And
You're not that old right now.
I know. I feel sometimes like I'm a little kid, but just as far as the way I like to think about life, you know, I like to just be happy. I feel like people just lose that sense of happiness as they get older. But I was in 7th grade, and this is something most people didn't know about me until I started doing the show, but I was bullied by 2 kids in 7th grade physically. Okay.
I'm sorry to hear that.
All 7th grade. It was a nightmare. And it was like, I'd be coming around a corner and I'd just be like, I'm going to see John Bruno, you know, and they grab, I was such a small kid until senior year of high school.
You had a growth spurt.
Yeah, like a senior year, I'd be walking around and be like, hey guys, what's up? I'd be like, what's up, Mark? But like freshman, sophomore, I'd be like, what's up, Mark? I'm like, hey guys, how you doing? So like, that was me. But so as a kid, I was even smaller. And this all happened because the end of the first art class, the first day of 7th grade, I saw these 2 kids picking on this small kid. And of course, me trying to make the world a better place, I said, hey guys, leave him alone. Hey guys, leave him alone. Those 5 words ended my year. I literally they were like, okay, we'll leave him alone. We're going to beat you up every day. So I talk about how in life you have a superhero that's protecting you at all times. You may not even know they're there. It may be the person you least expect that is your superhero. And that year, I would be thrown up against lockers, being punched, and I'm sitting there, and the whole wing would sit in a circle and watch this happen every day. They'd laugh. They'd watch.
That, Mark.
It was a nightmare.
I mean, that's literally like a nightmare.
It's a total nightmare. And I'd sit there and I never fought back because 2 guys, they're big guys. I'd sit there and just get hit. And through the crowd, I could start seeing like one guy goes this way, another guy goes that way. And through the crowd like a freight train, bullet train, my buddy Mike Green would come out of nowhere. He grabbed one guy, he throws him up against the other guy, he starts punching this guy, punching that guy, and I'm sitting there going like this. And whenever he was around, he would come to my savior. Sure. And he didn't even know this. He's one of my friends now on Facebook and Instagram. He's like, geez, I had no idea you dealt with that much. And I was just being a dumb friend, you know, but I said, no, you were the person I needed, because nobody else, my best friends would sit there and laugh while I got picked on and beat up every day. But Mike would not let it happen. He wouldn't stand for it. And the fact that this guy who was about the same size as these 2 guys would fight both of them for me, I still, to this day, I think of him as your hero. He's my hero. And so when I talk about him, I mention these things to my children. I want them to understand that there are people around you who will help you when you need it, but you need to let them know that you care. And my kids are constantly giving real talk to their friends. And I'll see something like this happen where someone sticks up for someone, does something really, really noble. And my son will turn to me and he goes, Daddy, just like Mike Green. Yep.
You've always made an impression on them with that story.
Yeah, that story, I mean, literally, you're right. It was a hard thing for me to go through. But imagine today, if I went through it today, and I finished up school at 2:20, and all day long I'm seeing text messages from those guys. I can't wait to punch your face tomorrow, Mark. Like, it would have been a nightmare.
I'm not sure that in today's day and age that it would have gone on as long as it did for you.
Probably
I think
not.
There
They
would
probably
have
got
been
into
an
it.
intervention at some point.
Yeah, and the way that all ended was kind of crazy. My family they found out eventually. And I'm sitting in the kitchen, like crying, because I was so embarrassed that I couldn't protect myself against these kids. And I'm sitting in the kitchen with them. This is months in. My brothers, I have 2 older brothers.
Taller than you?
Bigger, much bigger. My brother Michael, both my brothers hit puberty at like a normal age. The 7th, 8th, 9th grade, me, senior year. Hey guys, what's going on? Anyway, so my brother Michael's in there in the kitchen telling me how to take this guy down, these two guys. You get one guy, you start kicking him, and when blood starts coming, I'm like, what? You know? And he's telling me, like, do this. Then the other thing, I think one person was like, put a lock in your hand. If these guys come at you again, you just hit them hard once, and that'll be the end of it. That's what I hear him say, you know?
Right.
So the next day I go in with this lock in my hand, Josh. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. I got it behind my back, and I literally heard this from my friend Manny that day. He said to John, so John, you going to beat up Mark again today? Literally said that. And he goes, nope, we're done with Mark. I had that lock in my hand. I was ready to go. Nope, we're done with Mark. Now, as a 41-year-old man, I look back now and I think because I had that conversation with my brothers, my father the night before, I'm pretty sure the principal was involved. Principal called their parents and said, look, if your kids hit this kid again, they're getting expelled. Because for him to say, nope, we're done with Mark, that's the only thing that makes sense. The other thing I keep thinking is people have brought up,
That's a good thing for you. You might have done some damage to that lock.
That's exactly what someone said. Like, dude, you could have killed that dude. I never hit anybody in my life before. I was so angry because of what they did to me for months.
Psychologically, sounds like torture.
I may have just been like you wouldn't have been able to stop me by the time, because I would have maybe felt really good to get that out. I honestly wish I had enough heart within me to have just punched them once. You know, just to see, because maybe they would have stopped if they felt me actually have a little bit of heart. But I was so afraid, so small. It's amazing when you're terrified like that and you have no confidence. It goes back to the self-confidence. I had none when I was a little kid.
I mean, I think physical size.
That's a big part of it.
A big part of it.
Hey guys.
We don't. There's a lot of people who are shorter than others, and we regularly make fun of people who are short, and we don't think about the psychological damage it has over time.
Yeah.
So
well, all the name calling. We talk about this too a lot. It's like everything's categorized now. Oh, you're this. You're thin. You're fat. You're ugly. Like, what is this? We all have a uniqueness to us, and I think no matter who you stand in front of, if you spend a little bit of time with them, you're going to love that person. You're going to say, "Wow, there's something amazing about this person."
I think part of the human nature is to want to survive, and part of that survival mechanism is to be better than everyone else around you. So you find the weakness in them, and
you try to attack.
And all of a sudden, psychologically in your head, you feel that you're sort of superior to them. It could be. I think it's.
You think it's a DNA thing? Like
it's probably somewhat a biological thing, but I think it's obviously more cultivated in certain people than others. I think it's hard to remember that everyone is unique, and what you consider an asset may be actually a detriment. What you find weak in them may be their biggest asset.
Interesting.
But I think it's behavior that we employ, and when you're young, it's immaturity, and we do it, as we get older too in other ways. It's passive aggressive, but we all want to feel like we're the best. Yeah.
Well, I think you're right, because what are you doing something for if it's not to excel?
Exactly.
Like I don't think anybody should do anything unless you really want it, And I know this is the problem with our society, because most people are doing a job they don't want to do, so there's no passion behind it. And this also gets back to, if there was a way that we could do more of the things that make us feel great, we would be a different world, but we probably wouldn't be a successful world.
Well, there's nothing wrong with doing a job you don't love, because you don't know what you're going to learn from it, and two, you don't know what actually mentally plugging yourself in and being good at it's going to teach you that might go with
could be a different lesson within. Interesting.
Exactly, and that could be an asset to you in the next role you have.
You know what? That's a very valid point, especially if I think about, just the progression, the evolution of this show and where it's gone. It's about continuing and learning as you go, and continuing to understand where your strengths and weaknesses are.
Yeah.
And I'm almost at a point now where I'm forgetting about my weaknesses and not even trying to strengthen them anymore. I'm just going to dial in on my strengths and just go. You know what I mean? Because I think as I can build out Real Talk, as I can build out the Beatseat and stay safe, it's going to be other people that do the better things that I do that grow the business.
Sure.
My thing is the personal touch. I'm with the client.
You're very good at that.
Thank you. Well, I mean, look, I think back. I mean, I was an actor first. I loved being on stage entertaining people. When I'm out with clients, you guys I want you guys to feel good, like we're laughing.
I mean, we felt so comfortable with you.
And that's the idea. Like we should be, it's a funny thing. We became friends, and that's the way I like to do things. Like I'm building relationships in this life. This show is about becoming friends with every single person on the other side of this camera. And they all mean so much to me because we're all human. We're all trying to reach another level. I'm here trying to level people up is what I always say, you know? And I feel the only way, and this is just my personal thing, the only way I can level up is if I level everybody else up. Is that weird? Like,
Not at all.
My goal is to see everybody else say like, yeah, I feel great today, Mark. And then I'm like, now I got something. I'm actually feeling my soul fill when somebody else says, geez, I feel good now. You know? So it's like, I know it's going back to what you said earlier, is like caring what people think, but I more just want to see the smile on someone's face. And something I said 6-8 months ago, it's become one of my quotes, is a smile has an energetic value that costs 0 to the currency holder. It costs 0 to me to give this, but it has an energetic value.
It's synergistic, right? A smile.
Yeah. We do this funny thing every once in a while where I'll start with like this and I'll smile at the camera and tell you you can't smile. That's what you do. Just don't smile. Okay. Ready? And then by the time you smile, everyone's got to smile. A smile makes you smile. It's just the energetic reaction.
It takes a person and makes them human.
It takes a person, makes them use them. And it's also, okay, if you don't smile at one of those moments, you are psychotic. There's something wrong with you because the human reaction.
I walk into every patient room with a smile.
It's a wonderful thing because you know what? Especially when they're already feeling negative.
Exactly.
They see that smile on your face. The immediate thing is trust from a smile.
Exactly. And
I feel warmer.
In many cases, it's my first time meeting them, and they're there and they're suffering. I want them to feel like they can trust me, and they should. And that's why I try my best to greet them in a warm way, so they feel that whatever they're there for, it's going to be in safe hands.
Well, and that is what makes you a phenomenal doctor, is because your ability to connect with your emotion, your ability to connect with the patient and let them know you really care. Yeah, you have to say goodbye to some people, but that's inevitable. Right. But if those people can feel that their doctor really cared about them in their final moments, there's a value to that. And in fact, that's the only doctor I want to see. I don't want to be on a bed one day and the guy who has more emotion in him than ever is sitting there and some guy's walking in. I'm just a number on a sheet. Right. And they don't realize this guy has more to him. He's some gray guy sitting on a bed. Let's just get through it.
You know, I think it's actually some of the most fascinating things that I've come across are a lot of these, elderly folks in hospital rooms. I mean, if you spend 3 minutes with them and you ask them some questions about their life,
you'd be blown away, right?
You would come across some incredible stories.
Just
things that we would never could even accomplish in our lifetime. These people have done because they grew up in a different time.
Yeah, it's a different era. They were able to accomplish more. I even say people were able to make more money than they can now. You know, it's just like inflation has become an issue for our generation. And back then you could be an entrepreneur and you could start a small business and actually flourish in a way, you know. Now it's very hard to do that unless you reach critical mass. You're always trying to get to that critical mass, you know.
Because everyone has access to the market now.
Everybody has access to the market, to the internet. And even this, if I started Real Talk 10 years ago when other people started their shows, when Gary Vee started his daily whatever, we'd already have the following. But I started it after they dropped all of the organic reach. I'm back to where it's like you have no way to reach the world. Like I think about this sometimes, and this is why I don't get discouraged. Say if you said there's 2,000 people on Instagram, I got 2,000 people on Facebook, and we got maybe about 1,000 people on LinkedIn. That we're not live on LinkedIn right now, but that's about 5,000 people in the world that know about Real Talk. How many people are there in the world?
6
billion,
plus,
6.5
7
billion. So I joke sometimes. I'm like, even if all 5,000 of you tuned in, you were like, this is the worst show in history, I'd have to take it with a grain of salt because the world doesn't even know what we're doing yet. You know, but absolutely. I will say this, if you love what you're watching and you like this is every day. And I want to try something we haven't done before. Share this to your pages, share this with your world. The only way that other people will know about the Real Talk Show is if you start to alert them of the Real Talk Show. So I think we're probably good. I don't want to keep you too much longer. We've been on for an hour and 13 minutes. Can you believe that?
Good.
That's not bad,
Time
right?
flies when you're having fun.
We usually do about an hour and a half, so this is perfect. But I really appreciate it. Anybody have any quick topics before we get off the air? This has been amazing to have Dr. Josh Shajan on with me, and he's a good friend. He's a great doctor, and I think we're going to hear a lot more in the coming weeks about this coronavirus. If you had to take a guess, how many cases do you think there are, unknown cases? If you were just like, hey, yeah, we have found 2, but I bet there's, like, because I keep telling my wife, there could be 100,000 people with it out there right now, but it's so mild, or that 5.1 days hasn't kicked in.
Right.
And all of a sudden we're going to see these cases just explode in a couple days from now.
Most cases are going to be mild and undiagnosed because people don't have symptoms. Or they're very mild, you think it's a cold, and
And it will run its course.
And that's it, like any other virus.
Will that happen for people like me? And you're like, I'm 41. Will I get a mild case if I do get it, or is there a chance it could be a lot worse?
It's hard to say. Age is on your side, and the younger you are, the better you generally do. But there are some cases of fairly young people that have gotten very sick off of it. It's hard to say.
Like the 32-year-old guy in New Jersey, right?
Yeah.
He's like, I don't have any health issues, and he's like, this is the worst thing ever. Is he okay, or did he die?
I haven't followed up on that case, honestly.
I have to check, but it's a frightening time we're living in, my friend. But I would say that we're going to keep, hopefully, staying healthy and safe.
Be your best self. Practice good hand hygiene.
Yeah, no handshaking, guys. Josh said when he came in, no handshakes, no hugs, nothing. Like, stay away from each other. Keep you 6 foot. Maybe 6 feet. You think that's about safe distance for people?
6 feet's reasonable.
6 feet is reasonable. Josh and I are about 6 feet apart right now. We've been doing that for the whole interview here, just to make sure we're not infecting each other. I got 3 kids. He's got a business to run. I got 96 businesses to run.
Sick patients.
Yeah, you have sick patients. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, we hope that that is the one thing also, really quick. When you are dealing with so much negativity like that, does that affect your psyche, like, in a way? Like, there's nobody who you're going in and seeing like, hey, doc.
It's funny because it's funny you asked that, because our friends and family, my wife's a trust and estates attorney, so she deals with a lot of end of life issues, and I deal with a lot of sick individuals, people who are close to, if not near death. We talk about death all the time, my wife and I.
Do you really?
All the time. And it's, for some people it's very uncomfortable, but because of our jobs and how much we do it on a daily basis, we've become very comfortable discussing it on both sides, before and after. And I think our loved ones are sort of alarmed by how comfortable we are discussing it and the outcomes of it and what could happen. But I think that's just sort of like the nature of the work. And at the end of the day, the message is sort of the same. We want, us included, and everyone we work with, to be happy, right? Whatever that outcome is, as long as they were sort of happy with that decision, then that's the goal.
You see, guys, the most important thing I heard in that conversation, or that little response there, is happiness. Talk about that. Life is about locating your happiness. And if you're not doing everything you're doing in order to be happy, then what are you doing it for? It's not about collecting something that you'll never be able to spend. Maybe it's nice about leaving something for your next generation. But if you can't find happiness in all of your work, you got to redirect. You got to figure out what makes you happy, because we get only a finite amount of time.
It's true.
It's such a short amount of time.
It is.
I lost 11 years of my son's life already. Like, I look at him today, I felt he came this morning to like jump and lay down in bed for like 10 minutes before school, right? And I'm feeling his chest he's got like a man chest. He's 11 now. I'm like, what the heck? All of a sudden, he's a big kid. And I'm like, geez, I missed all of this time. But what's the alternative? I don't work, and then we're living in a box. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's one way or the other. You work your tail off so your children and your family have an opportunity, or you go and you live in the slums. You got one option here. But I like your idea. This is why we're starting Stay Safe. Why I have the Beatseat. We need to get multiple forms of income in order to,
at the end of the day, the
really
goal
develop.
is to really spend the time with people we love, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that the goal?
That's the goal. Be able to spend more time with them. Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. Well, listen, I appreciate you, Josh. It's so great to have you on. Guys, I want to say thank you for tuning in today.
Mark, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
It was awesome. Thank you very much. I'm going to put this on, and we'll say goodbye to you guys real quick. And remember, tomorrow we'll be back for day 438 in a row of the Real Talk Show. And make sure, if you have any topics you want me to get into, you just shoot them over. And I'll see you tomorrow. It's Mark Pyers. And it's Real Talk.